This prisoner is enjoying a massage. In the end, where is the prison that has such a preferential policy for prisoners? But only people who have been here know that this is hell on earth. 2 months ago, because Billy was selling drugs, he was arrested in Thailand. Living in a foreign land, he became the only white person in prison. At night, 100 people were locked in the same place. They slept crowded together. Every day when they woke up, there would be prisoners who had stopped breathing, then were dragged away by the guards using a bedsheet. Because they didn't have the same skin color, Billy quickly became a misfit. Not long after arriving here, Billy was discriminated against to the point that every time he went to fetch water, he was almost pushed into the tank. This was the first time he had touched another person. After punching each other, he was arrested by prison guards and put in a cage no different from a dog cage. The prison guards switched Billy with another prisoner and transferred him to a solitary confinement room. The prisoners here were all especially dangerous criminals. Several inmates began to make fun of Billy for not knowing Thai. They climbed on top of him and forced him to do push-ups. Billy felt severely insulted and insulted. Unexpectedly, this was the lightest punishment. That night, some drunks forced and took Billy to the bathroom without a guard. He witnessed with his own eyes the entire process of torture of another prisoner like him. When he slept, Billy always thought about it and his whole body trembled in fear. The next day, the tortured prisoner was discovered hanging from the window, but everyone here turned a blind eye as if treating a dead animal. The disaster was not alone. Billy even became addicted. Medicine. He asked the doctor to give him some painkillers, but the doctor used the excuse that Billy was white, so he threatened him into paying him a large amount of money. Billy was both angry and hurt. He punched the doctor in the mouth, opened his mouth and bit him. A mouthful of fresh blood flowed out of his mouth, causing such a terrible incident. Of course, he could not avoid a brutal beating from the prison guards. Billy was beaten so much that the prison guards locked him in a separate cell. Borrowing this opportunity, Billy pondered a lot and finally realized that if he continued to endure it, he would get into an even worse situation. Prisoners often use cigarettes as a substitute for gambling chips. He took the opportunity to buy a pack of cigarettes. Billy brought this medicinal plant and gave it all to the boss in prison, who finally stopped bullying him. That night, a few prisoners secretly removed the propeller in the cell. Billy didn't know what they wanted to do. But not long after, the prison guards arrived in anger, gathering all the prisoners to the yard. It turned out that 3 prison guards had died unexpectedly, so they began to conduct a strict investigation. But unable to find any murder weapon, at this time a prison guard came in front of Billy. He stared at Billy. Handily took the prisoner next to Billy away. A moment later a shrill scream came from the loudspeaker. The little criminal was beaten to death. Everyone knew that he wasn't the real killer, but doing so could serve as a deterrent to the prisoners. One day a prison guard agreed to give Billy some pills, on the condition that he help him beat 2 prisoners to death. Faced with such a wild request, of course Billy did not agree. "Where is your conscience, you bastard? Do you still have a conscience?" But unexpectedly, it was at this moment that Billy's drug addiction began to flare up again. Faced with the craving for drugs, his mind and will were so weak. One second he was still an honest white guy, but the next second he turned into a monster that kills without fear. He helped the prison guard. After finishing handling the 2 prisoners, Billy felt extremely regretful. Now that he had completely calmed down, he did not dare to believe that he had beaten those 2 unlucky men to death. Late at night Billy took out a blade and slashed his wrist. In desperation he didn't want to live another day. But a fellow prisoner helped him bandage his wound, and a rare ray of sunshine made him continue to put hope in life. One day, Billy happened to see the boxing squad practicing on the field. He suddenly thought that maybe when he joined that boxing team, he could change the current bad situation. Here, boxing prisoners can eat premium food, but the coach refuses to give him a chance. After all, Billy chose to play his old tricks again. He used cigarettes to bribe the coach. He eventually received a ticket to the boxing team. In every battle Billy fought, he almost lost. After just a few shots, he was cornered. However, Billy did not give up and trained so hard to win the respect of his teammates. On the contrary, the dangerous prisoners in prison knew that Billy joined the boxing team. They started teasing and teasing. They didn't believe Billy could do anything. Undeterred, Billy placed more faith in the boxing team, thinking that this was the most suitable place for him. Gradually, the coach also saw Billy's boxing potential. He began to teach Billy a few dangerous ways to fight, teaching him that when boxing, you must see through your opponent's moves before making a move. Billy began to make great progress. Now he could officially fight his enemies in the ring. The prison boxing tournament drew a lot of cheers from the audience, even though Billy still ate his way through the match. But the fresh drops of blood that flowed were completely different from being beaten by thugs in prison, and Billy won a standing ovation. Not long after the prison chief found him, it turned out that Billy's boxing ability was rumored throughout the prison. Now they hope Billy can represent the prison in the boxing tournament. In return, the prison chief promised to move him to a more comfortable boxing practice room. Billy of course agreed without any hesitation. Before leaving, the prison chief gave Billy a letter from his father. It turned out that his father had always cared about him. Finally, the day came to change rooms. The dangerous prisoners no longer looked at Billy with disdain and ridicule like before. This prisoner suddenly received the opportunity to escape. but when faced with freedom right before his eyes, he chose to go back to prison. It turns out he didn't want to get out of prison this way. 2 months ago, Billy was thrown into solitary confinement with dangerous criminals, after being transferred to a more luxurious cell for boxers, with the condition that he must represent the prison in a boxing match. Although he is also a prisoner, the inmates here are not the same as the previous ones. Among them, there are people who were arrested for confessing crimes on behalf of their friends, and there are people who steal to make ends meet. But the similarity with Billy is that they both look towards the future with a strong desire. Every day they tried to reduce their sins to prepare for the upcoming match. The inmates helped Billy improve his skills. After being in prison for a while, he never felt so happy. Looking at the world outside the fence, Billy felt very happy. Unexpectedly, Billy's drug addiction began to flare up again. He lost control and rushed into the ring, screaming at his fellow prisoner to quickly punch him. He then punched his cellmate extremely brutally. The prison guards arrested him again and locked him in a separate cell. At this moment, Billy finally realized that the only way to escape the shackles of drugs could make himself stand up firmly. So every day that follows, in addition to non-stop training sessions, Billy will fight to the death with his inner demons, after successfully overcoming his addiction. Returning to the cell, he apologized most sincerely to the cellmate he beat, and the other person also sympathized with him and continued to help Billy. But during a sudden workout, Billy felt a sharp pain in his stomach. He ran to the bathroom and couldn't help but vomited a pool of blood. After diagnosis, the doctor told Billy that because he had used drugs in the past, plus boxing, it had seriously affected his internal body. His internal organs have been seriously damaged. If his body suffers any more damage now, there will be a risk of bleeding to death. However, Billy soon saw this match as an opportunity to rebuild his life. He did not listen to the doctor's advice and chose to continue playing. On the day of the competition, all the prisoners were taken to an unfamiliar ring, and it turned out that their opponent was a prisoner in another prison. The match started and the two of them were evenly matched, but the opponent took advantage of Billy's fall and kicked him in the stomach. The intense pain immediately made Billy feel short of breath, but he still tried to stand up. It seemed that the opponent had seen through Billy's weakness. With every punch he punched straight into Billy's dust, his vision began to become blurry. But when he knew the audience was cheering for him, he still stood up and used all his strength to knock out his opponent. At the end of the match, before he could enjoy the fun, Billy suddenly vomited a pool of blood and fainted. When he woke up, Billy discovered he was lying in a hospital bed. With no guards or prisoners around, he suddenly realized that he had escaped from prison. He looked like a normal patient. After going to the hospital, he easily escaped from prison, but when he saw drug addicts on the street, Billy felt hesitant. If I keep going like this, I'll be no different from that wretched and cowardly person. Thinking of this, Billy returned to the hospital. He was taken back to prison. What he did not expect was that his father, who always looked down on him, would come to visit him. Seeing his father's accepting smile, Billy finally stuck to his choice. Okay, here comes the movie. If you like this video, please give us a like, subscribe and share. Goodbye and see you again.